This house is clear. Losers?
Get him the hell out of here, will you, please?
Losers!
Let's go, Ace.
Losers. The herd.
Unit 1 to Unit 2.
What?
We're home.
Base 1 to Unit 1. Base 1 to Unit 1.
Hold it, you mother! Hold it! Police!
There's been a break-in at Democratic headquarters, and they were bugging the place.
Woodward, Bernstein, you're both on the story now. Don't get up.
Redford.
I'm Bob Woodward of the Washington Post. Mr. Markham, are you here in connection with the Watergate burglary?
I'm not here.
Hoffman.
Hi, this is Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post, and I was just wondering if you can remember...
All the President's Men. The story of the two young reporters who cracked the Watergate conspiracy.
White House.
Howard Hunt, please.
He might be in Mr. Colson's office.
Who's Charles Colson? Did you know, Howard Hunt?
Well, the White House said he was doing some investigative work.
What do you say?
They stumbled into leads.
Certainly it comes as no surprise to you that Howard was with the CIA.
No surprise at all.
They tripped over clues.
We'd like to see all the material requested by the White House.
All White House transactions are confidential.
This whole thing is a cover-up. It's right on our nose.
And piece by piece, they solve the greatest detective story in American history.
There is no way the White House can control the investigation.
I don't want to say any more, okay?
Have you been threatened if you tell the truth?
Is there a cover-up?
Don't you understand what you're on to? Mitchell knew? Of course, Mitchell knew.
Woodward! Bernstein! Get in here!
At times, it looked as if it might cost them their jobs.
You guys are about to write a story that says the former Attorney General, the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in this country, is a crook.
Their reputations.
Why is the Post trying to do it? I don't know.
Perhaps even their lives.
This is going to be really fun. I never get to talk about this movie. It is absolutely one of my favorites. I think it is the perfect movie to be talking about right now. And so yeah, you just say fucking win.
I think we already started. I think we already started talking about All the President's Men here with Bo Ransdell, and I am Daeron Wilson, and this is the Psychosemantic Podcast. And there, we got that out of the way.
Yeah. Hey, guess what, Daeron? We fucking won.
There's a noticeable dread in my last recording, and I think it's palpable, which I guess is the same thing as saying noticeable, but...
Yeah. Well, look, I think everybody was on edge. And I think rightly, like all...
Oh, sorry.
Don't even worry about this.
I don't know what that was. Oh, a little bit behind the scenes. We started an hour earlier than we planned, and that was my alarm to tell me I had an hour to get ready.
Well, in an hour from now, remind past you that you've already started.
I will. Well, actually, I won't, because you know what? I could think of fewer things more enjoyable to do than continuously discussing this movie with a dear friend.
No shit. I mean, on both counts, this is a delight. But let's stay, like, here's my thing about the Biden victory. As I was saying, I think everybody was tense in the lead up because all the polls were like, look, don't even worry about this. Like, he's up by 130 in Wisconsin. Like Michigan, we can't even measure it. He's got it in the bag so much. Florida, done deal. North Carolina, maybe not North Carolina, but Texas for sure. So you were getting a lot of that, which is fun. Those are fun conversations to have, but also I think that Democrats who had gone through the 2016 heartbreak were skeptical even then. And then when Florida went election night, it was clear that Florida was just not going to be what the Democrats had envisioned, that sinking feeling came back. And it's been kind of interesting to me to see this growing optimism that started Wednesday, when it was like, oh shit, the more they count, the better this looks. And by the time you got to like Thursday, Friday, like Democrats had gotten cocky about that shit and we're just like, the fuck, call it. Why aren't you calling it? Come on, motherfucker. And then finally, obviously Saturday they called Pennsylvania and it was all over. At that point, man, that was like, I legitimately rolled tears, and I didn't intend to. I wasn't like, expecting to be celebrating or feeling that emotional about it, because it had seemed like a foregone conclusion, for the past couple of days. But when the news agencies, the various news agencies, started saying, yes, Biden is going to be the president-elect, it was such a to use your word, it was such a palpable sense of relief. And so when you started seeing like shots on the news of these spontaneous parties and celebrations that were taking place, spreading COVID hither and yon, in
some people slacked in that department.
Cities. Hey, look, man, like I'm not saying that it was smart. I'm saying I get it. There was a moment of jubilation, and it was really wonderful, and it was close. It was closer than anybody wanted it to be. It was occasionally terrifying. But at the end of the day, it turned out to be exactly what everyone thought the election was going to be, which was, hey, it's going to look night of like Trump won, and then as the mail and provisional ballots are counted, then it's all going to turn around.
Yeah, and the optics is the reason why the Republican legislature in Pennsylvania made sure that you couldn't process the mail-in ballots until after the other ones.
Well, all right, but so that was the whole Trump game, right? Was we're going to have all the Republican legislatures attempt to push counting of mail-in ballots to after the election, and then part two of the plan of this stupid fucking 3D chess that Trump was playing is, I'm gonna go to the courts and say any ballot that is received or counted after election day doesn't count. So you say you can't count them till after election day, and then you sue to say that they don't count if you count them after election day. And the problem is part two of his plan didn't work, because that is not how the law works. And like, you can say what you will about the number of Republican appointees on the court. It is disturbing. It is something that I don't know we understand the full scope of yet, and the danger of it. But at the end of the day, these Republican judges have thrown this shit out of court because it's nonsense.
Yeah, I think one of the cases was thrown out by a W. Bush appointee. Speaking of recounts and delayed election results.
Right, well...
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, the differences between something like this and 2000 is that there's a clear winner. That even if like, the closest margin is what, Georgia right now?
Yeah.
Which is already going to recount and doesn't factor into the electoral votes that Biden has won. So, again, I don't get twisted around the axle too much about the shit that Trump is doing, because one of the benefits of Joe Biden winning is I don't have to care anymore about Donald Trump. And so I've just kind of like every now and again I'll check a news site and it's like, what's he doing? Oh, nothing. He's continuing to lodge lawsuits and telling people that he's going to be the president next year. Okay, whatever. Like, let him do whatever the fuck he wants. It doesn't matter. He's not the president. You know, he's the president now, but he's lame duck. None of this shit matters. Like all of this flailing and protesting and all that stuff. And I like to think there has been a very noticeable sense of like, all right, whatever. Just kind of a shrug when it comes to him. Like, I'm still the president. And like, all right, whatever. I mean,
everybody except for like Vladimir Putin has called Joe Biden to say congratulations.
When Boris Johnson called, I was like, okay, that's the one, like that is the closest Trump analog you have outside like Erdogan.
Yeah.
But in terms of, you know, first world countries, that's the closest you get to a Trump overseas. And even he was, you know, he called Biden today, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's done. Like all the posturing and stuff. Like everybody again got kind of twisted around the axle about Mitch McConnell being real mealy mouthed about the election. It's like, that's just McConnell. He's just not committing to it because he doesn't want to get the shit from Trump.
Yeah, they've got a Georgia runoff.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And he wants Trump voters, so he's not going to say anything actively against Trump because they still want those votes. But I don't think in private quarters that Mitch McConnell thinks that Trump stands a snowball's chance in hell of being president in January 21st, you know?
Yeah. McConnell got what he wanted.
Absolutely. Got rid of Trump and held on to the Senate. That's the best possible outcome for Mitch McConnell, is that you have a steward of the country who's not a lunatic, but you can also hamstring any efforts to do shit that you find. Like, it's the McConnell move is don't let anything through the Senate and then complain about how Democrats won't let anything through the Senate.
Yep. And then the budget's really going to matter to him all of a sudden.
Sure, like, can you believe how much we're spending?
The Democrats are really just. But I've got my new Horcrux. See my black hand.
But yeah, that was something. But I'm like that's a fight for another day. You know, like we're not there. Like that's rough. We need to pay attention to Georgia. We need to send some money there. You need to make the calls, all that stuff. Like Georgia matters. But there is that other side of all of this, which is, you have to care about politics still, but you don't have to care about Trump anymore. And you at least until he goes to OAN or whatever the fuck he does. And even then, he's just going to be preaching to his choir at that point.
Yeah. I don't check the news the second I wake up before I even put my feet on the floor like I used to, checking to see what happened. I mean, there's still, I think I've said this before, and not to make light of abusive relationships, but the most abusive relationship I've ever had has always been with my government. And
no shit, yeah.
I'm afraid of what they're gonna do, you know, with what he can, a injured narcissist. But it's also mostly just like I have more confidence that everything's gonna work out the way it's supposed to, but I'm still being reminded here and there of things that just happened because they were tradition, not because they had to. Like there's the Trump appointee preventing the releasing of funds and facilities to the Biden transition team. Go ahead and look it up, dear listener, if you care. I will not give the date, but this is being recorded on the day 4 years ago in 2016 when President-elect Trump was invited to begin his transition.
That's right. What Pence and Biden met today, 4 years ago today, something like that?
Yeah, and Obama invited Trump to the White House. But now Pence is going on vacation, which is a great thing for, you know,
Yeah, get out of town. Yeah, I don't blame him. Take mommy and head for the hills.
And if, because two or three different people have COVID that were at the watch party election night.
That's what I was going to say, man. Just get out of this fucking hot zone of a White House for a little while. That's probably why he's heading out of town. Yeah. He's just like, hey, I don't want the COVID.
Numbers are bad in Indiana, but not as bad as the percentage in the West Wing, as far as I can tell.
Right. Per capita, the White House is one of the most disease-ridden locations on Earth right now. And not just the moral kind of disease it normally has.
Right. The the disease that cannot be helped by the possible good news of that 90% effective vaccine that everybody knew they wouldn't be able to apply for any sort of next level thing until mid-November, but Fredo Jr. is really annoyed thinking that a drug company did it to politically hurt his dad.
Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe the head of Pfizer was like, this fucking idiot, we got to get rid of him. Look, everybody, the vaccine's ready, but until this fucker is out of office, we're just keeping our hats on that. I don't think that's the case. I think things just kind of happen when they happen. I tend to think, because I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, I tend to think that most shit is coincidental. Even something like this, especially something like this, this feels like something that, whenever they were able to confidently announce it, they were gonna. And, the fact that it happened after the election, like if it happened on November 4th, I think that would have been more suspect.
Yeah.
But the fact that it happened, a week after the election, all right, fine. If you want to bitch about it, I mean, the B plot of that is, oh, by the way, did you happen to notice how difficult it is to send anywhere? Like the requirements to refrigerate the vaccine are more it's a lower temperature than literally anything else on the market, and I think like 50 degrees cooler than any truck is currently equipped to handle in the US. So they've still got to figure out how to dispense it because it's such a delicate vaccine. So it's not like, hey, we've got a vaccine and now we're out of the woods. It's like, hey, now we've got a vaccine. That's great. That is great news. But now we've got to figure out distribution and manufacture on this kind of scale. I mean, because you're talking about billions of people who, in theory, are going to need this vaccine. Although I'm sure there are already people lining up to tell you that it's a government conspiracy. They're going to put a chip in you or something. And I'm like I saw something where like the UK, I think, announced like, hey, we're not going to make the vaccine mandatory. And I'm like, good. I hope we follow that same rule here.
I'm sure. I think the Jenny McCarthy lobby will defeat any sort of universal movement towards that. And if they can't transfer the vaccine, there will be, vaccination facilities that will become execution centers to the anti-vaxxers, who will also say there's a 10-year-old study that proves that the COVID-19 vaccine causes something.
Yeah. And, and right. I mean, that's entirely possible that they would have a distribution center where it's like, hey, we've got a place within 2 hours of everybody where you can go get a vaccination. But you're right. Like immediately it would be like the fucking V lizards have set up their anti-cancer tents.
It's a slaughterhouse.
Yeah. But again, all right. That's a problem that takes care of itself. Like I'm not hard-hearted by any stretch, but if you're going to be willingly ignorant and in the face of a pandemic that is becoming an endemic disease to our species, and you're just like, you know what? I know it could kill me, but I don't want that vaccine. All right. That is a choice to make. And best of luck to you. I hope it works out. I'm going to have my vaccine, so even if you're all ate up with the Rona, ain't going to hurt me none. I mean, at a certain point, you just got to be like, you got to you got to let your freak flag fly. And if that freak flag involves being an anti-vaxxer, you know, hey, we've gotten off pretty easy with these kids not being immunized against mumps and measles and shit. But you have a bunch of anti-vaxxers with this COVID vaccine. You're going to see a pretty substantial death count in that community. Mm-hmm. And again, that is the path they have chosen. And I do not wish anyone ill will, but you know, there is such a thing as a stupid tax. And sometimes that tax can be quite high. You know, there's that whole, you know, Darwin Award shit for this very thing of like, hey, if there is a pandemic and you refuse to get a vaccine and then die of that virus, well, I don't know that we could have done much for you. You know?
Yeah, if you keep pushing away the life raft, that is a bummer.
Right. It's the old joke about like the guy on top of the house when the flood comes, and you know, the boat comes by and says like, hey, do you want to hop in the boat? And he's like, no, God's gonna save me. And then a helicopter comes by, drops a letter. He's like, no, God's gonna save me. And then like, you know, there's more rescuers come by and a motorboat, and he's like, no, God's gonna save me. And then the guy drowns when he gets to heaven. He's like, the fuck happened? I waited for you to save me. I prayed for hours, and God's like, look, I sent you 2 boats and a fucking helicopter.
What the fuck do you
want? What did you want? You know, that's this vaccine. It's if it turns out to be over 90% effective as they're saying, and you know, it's just a thing you got to get yearly or seasonally or whatever it is, then
yeah,
great. Humanity wins again. Well done, humanity. You know?
I think if the numbers hold, it would be like a booster shot after 6 months.
Yeah, like you get the initial vaccination, and then like when the next flu season rolls around, you get your booster. And yeah, again, fine. You have 2 shots a year, all right. And I don't die choking on my own lung fluids. Okay,
sounds great.
That sounds like a valuable use of my time.
Yeah, and so, I'm one of those guys with lots of tattoos that winces every time I've got to go get shots, but I get my goddamn shots.
Yeah, you know, there are just some things that just don't be stupid, you know.
Yeah. Don't dare to be stupid, as Weird Al would encourage you to be.
Right, even Weird Al, and I know this because I know my Weird Al, would tell you that you should be responsible and get vaccinated. That being stupid can be a joyous, wonderful thing, like, you know, mashed potatoes being your friend. But
I love that you know how to go deeper into this reference.
I've got a signed Weird Al set list on the shelf behind me. So, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go. And it's a set list from the tour where he did nothing but originals. Called I think it was called the Shameless Self-Indulgence Tour, something like that. But it was, oh man, it was a fucking delight.
Does this mean we're gonna have to do UHF to talk about corporations taking over independent media?
Oh wow, yeah. What a terrific film, and it still holds up really well. Like some of the references and whatnot are dated, but like that movie still holds up for me.
Oh yeah.
But look. That's not what we're here to talk about, Daeron. And I feel like we've already been bearing the lead too long because so many of the themes of All the President's Men are so relevant to the conversation about sort of what comes after the election of Biden, I think.
Yes.
And so let me just say from the outset, I have seen All the President's Men 25 times. Over the course of my life. Secretly, here's the thing, Daeron. Not a lot of people know this about me. I love a newspaper story.
Me too.
What Spotlight recently was terrific. Maybe the best since All the President's Men. But I love a good like journalist on the trail of a story movie. I love it. Love it.
The Paper. Newsroom.
The paper is very good. The newsroom is great. Even something like Broadcast News, which is more parody, but it's so fun because there's something to me, and like I was an English major in college, and I briefly flirted with the idea of going into journalism, but then I was like, I'd rather make shit up. That seems like a lot of work. Journalism is hard. Don't let anybody tell you different.
No, for real. I was a journalism major that was advised to switch to an English major because by the time I was done with college, my advisor said that you could get a journalism job with an English degree.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I mean,
no, it's not. It's not. I'm podcasting. It's not
right. Yeah. Well, no. Again, he's probably right that could happen. The question is, should it happen?
Yeah.
And I think maybe. So, all right. I will say what All the President's Men, when I first saw it, what it represents to me is really very little to do with Watergate. Even though it is, obviously a depiction of the Watergate investigation, but to me, the movie was always about the fact that there were some people born into this world for whom the story is what mattered. And that, to me, is the story of All the President's Men, which is they never go so far as to lie. But like the scenes where they're like, hey, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, okay, we know it's Porter. Or I'm going to say, who's P? And you're going to say, I know it's Porter. And then we'll see what she says. And that kind of thing.
That's a non-denial denial.
Right. It's like, hey, I'm going to count to 10. And if you don't hang up at 10, then I'll know that the story is right. That kind of shit. But it's going to those links, right? It's there. Like there's a character, and I can't remember exactly which one it is now, who tells them, they're like, hey, it's not just about the story. And she's like, yeah, it is. And there's a moment there and where they kind of a brief moment of self-reflection where they realize, like, yeah, that's true.
Oh, it was that guy's wife.
The guy,
right. Who told him he had to quit. Yeah. He's like, this is for his benefit, and she's like, no, it's not.
Right. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And yeah, to me, that is so much of what this movie is about, is that Woodward and Bernstein are incredibly driven to get this story. And it has to be true. Like, I'm not saying that they're out to get somebody or they're out to invent something, but they don't really care who gets hurt to get the story, because the story is what matters. And so a lot of times, but I also see that as heroic. Like that's the weird dichotomy, I think, of these characters for me, and something I've thought about a lot watching this movie over the years, is there is no question in my mind that the characters in the film of Woodward and Bernstein, separating them from the actual reporters, that they're the heroes of the movie and they are absolutely doing the right thing. But they're also willing to do almost anything to do the right thing. And that's, to me, that's the interesting thing about them as people in the film. I love that. I love the fact that Ben Bradley is basically newspaper god. Where he just swoops in and is just like, wrong, you got it. There's no story.
Put it on the 6th page.
Yeah, put it inside. Well, this is front page stuff. You got 3 of the 5 names. There's no story. And also, is it? No, it's Jack Warden who says, Woodward, Bernstein, you're on the Watergate story. Don't fuck it up. Oh, it's so good.
And the Ben Bradley story about Lyndon Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
Sort of speaking to like what you said, he's like, I fucked up, but I wasn't wrong.
And that's kind of the what he tells him, like, you can fuck up, just don't be wrong. And so I love all that stuff about the movie. And of course there's, it like the Watergate story is the story of modern politics. It is the thing that started everything else. The mistrust of government. Like the Kennedy assassination was an emotional blow, but Watergate was the thing that was like, that made the presidency feel compromised in a way that nothing ever had. It humanized the presidency in a way that it was never human. Like there's a reason FDR didn't like to be shot in the wheelchair. Like there was a larger than life sense about the presidents, that they were the figureheads of this country. They were like, yes, the idea was that anybody could grow up to be president, but in the same way that anybody could grow up to be Neil Armstrong, that they were exceptional people. And Watergate was that was the loss of innocence for this country, that our leaders are not always going to be looking out for us, that they're human beings. And in the case of Richard Nixon, an incredibly fallible human being. Not only was he a criminal, but he was paranoid and narcissistic, and that, like, he shares a lot of traits with Trump, and Trump has certainly pulled some shit from the Nixon playbook, whether he meant to or not. But like, Trump is the much exaggerated version of Nixon. Like, he is the Nixon who didn't quietly record conversations with Kissinger and just tweeted all the crazy shit he thought, Yeah.
I'm telling Stephen Miller, I'm telling Haldeman to fucking send those checks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll tell you what. You tell Pompeo that they can take them black fellows down in Georgia. Nixon was quietly racist, where Trump was overtly racist. And it's nice I can talk about him in the past tense. Even though he's still technically president, he's still the ex-president in my heart. And so, yes, Trump was our most racist, overtly racist president without going back to, like, the 1800s.
Right, like his boy, Andrew Jackson.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like going back to old Stonewall. That's how far back you have to go. And the thing about All the President's Men, and it feels quaint now, and it's sort of why there's almost a weird doubling effect here, where All the President's Men tells the story of sort of the loss of innocence of media. And media has since, newspaper media and news media in particular, and then starting with the advent of like Fox News and MSNBC and more partisan outlets like that, there was a loss of innocence. Yeah, that, like, there's been a loss of innocence with the media, because now, like, this is the first time in history that I can think of where you can say, depending which news outlet you're reading, you just may not get the truth. And that's something that didn't necessarily happen. At the time of All the President's Men, man, you had to, like, find an underground zine to find this kind of outrageous, like, slander and fallacy that you now find on purported news blogs. And so, eventually someone will make the All the President's Men of the news media. Maybe that was what the what was the Nicole Kidman movie where they took down Roger Ailes?
Oh shit. Bombshell?
Bombshell.
No? Was it Bombshell?
Yeah, it certainly was. So, yeah, maybe Bombshell is kind of that movie, but the movie needs to be about the fact that news has become fundamentally corrupted. And our popular news media is fundamentally corrupted. And that's, like, it's frustrating because All the President's Men feels quaint now. And I am sure that this kind of journalism, like we saw it through the Trump years, there were outlets that were doing fucking amazing investigative journalism. But that happened in an echo chamber where only people who were open to, truthful news were getting it. It's not like at the time where there were only 3 news sources because there were only 3 television channels, and maybe you read the local paper, but that was still going to be largely the same information. It wasn't going to be so wildly different that you couldn't have a shared set of knowledge with your neighbor. And that no longer exists. We don't live in a world where your next door neighbor could be getting the same facts that you are, and that's fucking crazy. That's like that is the thing that Trump was a symptom of. When everyone says like, well, Trump wasn't the problem, Trump's the symptom. That is what he was a symptom of. The fact that there is a as John Edwards once said, there are 2 Americas. Only instead of being the ones that he could fuck and the ones he couldn't, it's the ones who are kind of into right-wing news, and then there's kind of everybody else. And I'm gonna sound partisan by saying that I think MSNBC is certainly rooting for the Democrats to win, but it uses mostly facts. Like that's the difference. I think that there's a lot of spin to some of MSNBC's coverage, but it tends to be coverage of information that is not crazy and wrong.
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. Well, and again, Fox News, when the sun is out, Fox News mostly traffics in facts too. It's just when the night falls and the creatures come out and it's all their opinion hours that network just goes fucking bananas in a way that no other network does. Like there is not an analog to a Sean Hannity. That guy is a shill in a way that I don't think I've ever seen.
I would totally check out MSNBC or something like that way more often if they had a mirror of the Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham sort of thing. Like if they just like, okay, well, it's 8:00.
Right. Our next guest is a violent black revolutionary who wants to overthrow the local government of Portland, Oregon. What do you have to say for yourself? I want to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And now for the other side, you've already firebombed the building. How do you feel about what your colleague has said? I think he should have been here throwing the Molotovs. Yes, I would love that show.
It's the time for the ACAB hour with Antifa. And it's like, hello, everybody. She's got puppets and everything. Like, I'm Antifa. Hello.
I'm Jim Antifa. Here to overthrow your local fascists.
Yep. 1312, everybody. 1312.
The Antifa stuff, that is one of those things that it's for people in kind of that Trump orbit. I think it's difficult for them to understand that Antifa is kind of a vague idea at best. That it's like, yeah, it's more of it's a movement in the same way that like Woodstock Nation was a movement. It's not really a real thing and nobody's in charge of it. It's just, when shit pops off and you throw a trash can through a window, you yell, Antifa! That's kind of it,
Yeah. Despite what your libertarian friends might say.
Right. Like, I would be the perfect person to receive an Antifa newsletter. There just ain't one. It's not that organized. I wish it was, I would like something a little more aggressive than the shit I get from, Pod Save America.
Yeah.
which is, yeah, they're critical, but they're not talking about overthrowing shit.
No, maybe if you go into the love it or leave it, it's a little bit closer to that, but still not even then. I don't know if you listen to them.
Yeah, I like love it or leave it a lot. I'll tell you here's my favorite political podcast right now is a show called Hacks on Tap. And I like it because it is very much a horse race kind of show. And much less about evaluating the ethics of the politics and more just about the effects of the politics. It's David Axelrod and Mike Murphy, who ran McCain's campaign, and Bob Gates. Do I have that right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. But it's those guys, and then they have kind of a rotating bench of like, Heilman and Alex Wagner's popped up a couple of times, and folks like that. People who have been, running campaigns for decades, and so it's a lot of old professionals talking about how to run a campaign, and I love that as a political show now because it there's a lot of joking about Republicans and Democrats, but nobody is pitching an agenda on the show. And I dig that. It's very practical politics. And something I think that's going to be valuable in the certainly the next couple of years as you're talking about like navigating a Republican Senate, although narrowly. Like here's the thing that I think is encouraging about the Senate makeup as it is. It's not terribly encouraging for folks like me and you, Daeron, who are like, what would be great? Public health care. It's not great for that, but it's real good for COVID relief. It's going to be economically, it's probably going to be really good because you're going to be able to swing for a couple of regulations that maybe you wouldn't get thanks to like a Susan Collins or somebody like that. Here's the thing. I think that because Trump is no longer going to be there bullying Republicans, it's going to be a little bit easier to split off a couple on more moderate kind of legislation. That's not exciting by any stretch, but it will improve people's lives. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what we have to be cool with. We're a lot of good things are going to happen when Biden steps in and undoes a lot of Trump's executive orders and has some EOs of his own that, like, he's talking about an EO to just dismiss the first $50,000 of student debt in the first few days.
That would be sweet.
That's fucking crazy. If he does that, and that's not like, hey, somebody whispered it. That's like coming out of the transition is like, oh yeah, these are the executive orders that he's thinking of signing in the first 100 days. And how life-changing would that be? That's anyway, like, that's the kind of shit when people say it didn't matter between Trump and Biden. This is the kind of shit I'm talking about. Like, Trump would never think of doing something like this.
No, he'd increase the interest rates if he could.
Right.
Because Betsy DeVos owns fucking student loan collection company.
Right. It is they were in it for themselves. Biden, say what you will about the dude, Biden is an honest to goodness public servant. And I know that sounds corny and people don't buy that, but I think that's what he is. I mean, yeah, he's got a hint of, self-absorption and narcissism. Every politician does, but not to the extreme of a Trump. And also he's a dude who, again, has shown again and again and again and again that he's like a like emotional, empathetic person that genuinely cares about his fellow man. And that's gonna make such a world of difference. Like, you're gonna see actual things happen to reunite the albeit rockin' 666 kids, who, I think that was the last number I saw, that don't know where their parents are at the border. Like, Biden won't let that stand. That shit is gonna get fixed, or to the best of our ability, to the best that you can undo something that horrifying. But that's the kind of shit, like, actual real world good things are going to happen to people because we won this election. And despite all the trouble in the Senate and all that stuff to come, that's why I'm still so optimistic and excited, because like a decent human being is in the White House, and what more could you possibly want? Even if it were a Republican, I would take that. I would take that difference between Trump and another Republican if it was just like, give me a John McCain, somebody like that I disagree with totally, but I also think that he cares about people, or did when he was alive. So I don't know. It's one of those things I keep coming back to of like, every time I start to feel frustrated with, like, there are going to be some really serious fights to come, and some of those we're going to lose. We just got to keep reminding ourselves the cost of letting somebody that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing and doesn't care, furthermore, doesn't care what the cost of that has been. And the other side of that is figuring out how to reach out to people who did think it was a good idea. And that kind of gets back to our All the President's Men conversation, is how do you pierce that stream of information that they're getting from sources that are never going to give them the kind of information that you and I are discussing on this show. Things like forgiving $50,000 of student loan debt. I'm pretty sure that's not front and center on Fox's coverage of Joe Biden.
I'm sure it's not. And if it is, it's, well, you had to pay off your $700 in student loan costs in 1985. Why should some liberal agenda leftist student blah 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 blah? That's about as much student loan debt I still have left.
Yeah, I don't think I have that much. In fact, I'm certain I don't have that much. And so yeah, there's every chance in the world were that to happen, I would have a portion of debt just disappear. That's fucking crazy. And even if not, like, even if it didn't happen to me, even if there was some rule that, like, hey, it has to be within the past 20 years or whatever,
that's
or
wonderful.
Even starting today, right? Even if it was just starting today, anyone who is currently in college, even if that's the starting point, like, I understand that, then fucking great. That means that generations moving forward, that means that there would be generations of Latino and Black kids and other minority kids who are statistically buried by financial debt with college, that would never have that problem. That they would actually emerge from college on an even playing field. That's epic. That is such good news for this country. And it's right around the corner. Like, that could be something that 3 months from now is just a thing that happened because we won.
Yeah, I've never been a pull up the rope ladder person.
Yeah,
right.
What that's like, this whole notion of, hey, we leave the world a little better than we found it so that the next generation has a little bit better. That's all this is. It's the 7 generations idea. Right. Like, and look here. All right, Daeron, here's the other fucking ugly truth of all of this.
All right. It's a good time for it.
Yeah. Let's get to some ugly truth. The other ugly truth is that we as Democrats and progressives and liberals, or, whatever label you want to ascribe, we've got to be cool with Trump people. We've got to be cool. Because they're not going to be cool with us. Like, somebody's got to be the bigger person here, and it's got to be us. So we got to be cool.
But I don't want them to get consolation prizes in the cabinet.
No. I that's not what I mean.
Okay.
I'm talking. No. Fuck that. Like they fucking lost. All right. That's just how it goes. You want to put like, I don't know, like you put Ben Sass in there doing some fucking thing with the farmland, whatever. Fine.
John Kasich can go fuck himself though.
Yeah. Fine. You did your video at the crossroads, but again, make him an ambassador to something. Who cares?
He didn't earn it. Fewer Republicans or more Republicans voted for Trump this year than they did in 2016. He didn't do shit for us here in Ohio. So he can get a really shitty job if he's going to get a job at all, because he didn't do anything for
be deputy mess hall inspector.
Yeah, he can do that. He can, Anyway, sorry. I really hate John Kasich, but it's just because he was my governor for so long.
No, I get it. I've got no love for Kasich. I think that, I mean, all these Republicans, the Romneys of the world, although that's a nice move. You want to have a good time. You pull Romney into the cabinet, into some minor position, and you open up his Senate seat and see what happens. See what you can do in Utah.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I'm not for rewarding these Republicans who had, the minor backbone to slightly disagree with Trump, but still didn't vote against him with any kind of regularity or passion. Like Romney, I think, has issued the most full-throated attacks against Trump on the Republican side. But even that's pretty thin. So yeah, I'm with you. But I mean, like you and I, that the common people on the street, that even though for 4 years we've had to do nothing but eat Confederate flag flavored bullshit from an entire section of the country, that for 4 goddamn years, Daeron, we had to listen to like all the homophobia, the xenophobia, the small-mindedness, the anti-science rhetoric, that we had to put up with all that bullshit. And it stings to say this because I can hold a grudge with the best of them. But there has to be that point. At some point in this country, we have to kind of put down the gun. And somebody on one side or the other has to do that first. And I would like to see us at least try in this moment. That when you have a president who is, I mean, let's be honest, he still has the most progressive legislative agenda that ever was for the Democratic Party. But he's still a moderate, institutionalist kind of Democrat. I think we gotta love what we have. And when you have the leader of the country saying, cut the shit, everybody's been at a real high temperature for a long time and we need to knock it off, then I think we owe it to both the president-elect, and ourselves to give that a shot. As perhaps a wise man once said, give peace a chance. And as much as it hurts, and as much as the temptation to be a little bit to engage in a little bit of schadenfreude here, and I will to some degree, but I try to come back to the idea of kindness and being able to say, like, look, the only way that we're going to get people on our side is to show them that we're not going to give them a hard time for decisions that they've made or beliefs that they still hold, Obviously, I am not excusing racism and xenophobia. As soon as someone spouts some shit like that, again, don't engage, just write them off. Just write them off, and you can take some small comfort in the fact that you never ever have to listen to another thing that person says again, with any degree of seriousness. But yeah, that's my big concern, is that we're gonna have, and maybe it's just cockeyed optimism, Daeron, but I'm hoping that maybe there's at least a moment where it's possible that the rift in this country could be healed a little bit, that we could get back to that place where we can politically disagree with someone without painting them as our enemy. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that if Biden comes through with some of the things that he has said that he's gonna do, there's gonna be a decent chunk of people that were like, oh, okay, all right, cool.
Right. He didn't actually have sex with my children.
Yeah, he didn't have sex with my children. Oh, I understand he has a stutter, so a lot of the time when he stops and restarts a word or says a different word, maybe I didn't have the chance to see a fish called Wanda, and I don't understand how, or, other things that are a little bit more educational, where it's, like I think his mental faculties are clearly more solid than Donald Trump's, but even so, I'm trying. I definitely did not track down all the people that have said you lost, get over it over the last few years. It was tempting. I did not do any of the rubbing against anything, and I'm still a little just cautious because the election hasn't been certified yet. Like we talked about earlier, I've got that confidence and everything, but I'm not a big pump your fist before the finish line guy anyway. But I mean, if Biden can't get right-wing type people to at least be like, okay, then it's fucked, because he would have been a Republican, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and also, and again, this, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but my larger point is, it not only has to come from him, it has to come from the people who support him. Like you said, of just biting your tongue when you're like, God damn it, 2 years ago, you said this thing that was the most outrageous shit I've ever heard, and I wanted to punch you until your face was pulp. And being able to, that's the thing you got to let go, is all the people that were like, fucking, I'm going to own the libs, that kind of shit. Like, that's the stuff that even in the face of it, even now when, you hear those people like, I'm, the election got stolen, Trump's a real president, like the only, and that all started with Trump. Like Trump is accountable for all of this bullshit. It's only a real election if I win, and if I lose, then they stole it. Like, this is one of those, like, the Republican Party, and I don't mean the people in the Republican Party, I mean the leadership, should be fucking ashamed of themselves for not standing up and being like, you know what, whoever wins. That's how it works. And come, like, whenever the states certify a winner, then that's what we're going with.
We should count all the legal votes. Like, no fucking shit. That's the votes. Those are the votes that are getting counted, jackass.
Yeah. Well done. Yeah, and like all this stuff about observers not being able to see and all that kind of shit, like all that stuff has been disproven time and time and time again by all accounts. And look, if somehow Joe Biden was the head of some criminal cabal that was able to manipulate the election, then he should be prosecuted. Like, this should be investigated. There should be a Woodward and Bernstein sniffing their way through this. I just don't believe such a conspiracy exists. Yeah. And if that is not the conspiracy, then it's just a bunch of people with sour grapes.
Ronan Farrow would have found out if he was beyond creepy.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like a Woodward and a Bernstein, would it have mattered if the president was a Democrat? Fuck no.
No, I mean, that was one of the things about their team was Woodward was a Republican, and he was waspy, and he was new. And Bernstein had been around forever, but he's like, oh, this means that this thing happens, but I can't prove it, and then they just fucking played off each other, and it just sort of, they became to have like that shared hive mind. And one of the things that I really like was that in the making of the movie, Hoffman told Redford that they should learn each other's lines. That way, whenever they felt like it, they could interrupt the other person and take over. And Alan Pakula was like, great.
Yeah.
And, it's just one of those like in the making of there's Redford and there's Hoffman. We got William Goldman from Princess Bride and Butch Cassidy and Marathon Man, and Pakula. What did he do? He did the trilogy, right? He also did Parallax View and Clute.
He did indeed.
Which Clute, I guess that's gonna have to get covered because I've already done Parallax View.
Right, you'll have to complete the Pakula trilogy, the Pakula pack.
Yeah, the Pakula pack, the Pakula Fecta. But they didn't really like each other, but they worked together, and their different traits really just sort of made the team.
Yeah, I by all accounts, that it was a really like an unusual partnership between two very different dudes. But yeah, like you said, I read that same thing about them learning each other's lines. I thought that was very cool. There really is sort of a magic to chemistry in a moment, like they were the right people at the right time. And the thing, sometimes I like to look through terrible reviews of like unassailably great movies like this,
right.
Where I'm like, let me read the 1 stars and see what they say. And in this one, like some of it was like, this is all liberal propaganda. I was like, all right. I mean, it's kind of famously one of the most like accurate films to ever be made, but whatever. Right. I think the only thing that is inaccurate is that the thing with the him sneaking into Ned Beatty's office, that never happened.
And they had Ben Bradley there. They had they each sort of all hung out with Woodward and Bernstein, and Redford was all concerned because this was 1976. Nixon left office 4 years before that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like watching it now. It's like, oh, this is a history. No, people were denying the movie, saying they didn't want to make it because who wants to hear more about Watergate? And Robert Redford was just really into it. And in one of the interviews I saw, that was one of the reasons why he got so weird about it. I mean, they brought trash from the Washington Post to their soundstage where they recreated the Washington Post.
Yeah. Oh, all right, here's another little fun fact. The only thing in the movie fully lit is the interior of the post office, the Washington Post office. Everything else, it has shadows, at least. Even in the sunlight and stuff, you see shadows in every shot.
Speaking of which, I guess we should bring up Gordon Willis, the cinematographer.
Yeah, this looks like a documentary. That's what I love about it. It looks like a documentary, but it is also steeped in that kind of 70s grittiness. So all there's like those shots inside the parking garage when he's meeting Deep Throat, and it's just like this gorgeous darks and only these very sparse columns of light, and it looks beautiful, but it also looks real. I mean, like it looks like a documentary of the time. And that goes to the performances too. Like everything feels like it was meant to be as authentic as possible to the moments it's trying to capture. And, it's some of the conversations that they have are kind of stilted and a little wooden and that kind of thing. But that's sort of like, that is the dance of trying to get somebody to give you information. And I got it. All right. So Redford and Dustin Hoffman are both terrific in this movie. And I think my favorite scene to illustrate that is that first scene where Hoffman starts rewriting him.
Yes.
When he comes over and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Look, I put Coulson up top. I rewrote this. I reshaped it a little bit. Look, you read yours and you read mine. I think mine's better, but we'll do whatever you want." And he's like, "Okay." And he reads it, and then he just walks away, grabs all the notes that he's been taking, and dumps them on Bernstein's desk. And he says, if you're gonna if you're gonna punch me up, make sure you get the facts straight.
Yeah, I don't mind what you did. I mind the way you did it.
Yeah, that line is so fucking good. That's one of those things that has stuck with me over the years. Is in just kind of how you treat people, right? Like, if you want to help somebody, don't help them and then act like an asshole about it. Don't make it hard for them to thank you. And I think that that moment between them kind of it also casts aside their rivalry, where Woodward is just like, "Look, you're right. I'm not gonna argue that point, and I'm a big enough person to admit it, but also don't be a dickhead to me." And I like that.
And they sort of trade off, not necessarily a 1-for-1, but in their different styles of reporting, each one has their different moments where they're like, "Man, you really fucked that up."
Yeah. One of my favorites of that is like when Bernstein, they go to I think it's one of the secretary's houses where he's like, "Hey, can we just come in for a second?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't think so." And when Redford goes, "Oh, we don't want to come in.
Yeah. We just have a question."
Yeah, like I'm gonna cut the legs. And Hoffman looks pissed about it. Like, "Look, man, I know what you're doing here, but goddamn, that like you really just cut the legs right out from under him." But again, I think that goes to the point of like, they're not necessarily great people, even to one another. Like what they're doing is heroic, and what they manage to do is, Herculean, but they're also just kind of dudes. And
they grinded it. They grounded it out.
Ground it out, I think. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the last shot of the movie too, is as Nixon is taking his second inauguration, and it's just them at their typewriters pounding out all the shit that is about to take this dude down. Yeah. As well as, the teletype across the screen letting who got what, and the chronology of one of my favorites is the quick turnaround from like, Nixon says he'll never resign, and then like one other story, second line, Nixon resigns.
Yeah. August 1972.
Yeah.
Nixon resigns. And then no music in the fucking credits. Just boom.
There's very little music overall, kind of contributing to that documentary feel to it. And there's that great moment. I know I'm just gonna bounce it around, just like, "Hey, remember when?" But when Hoffman shows up after like getting the scoop from that one lady and has all the notes, and he's been drinking coffee all night, so he's just wired as shit.
Here's a matchbook. Here's a napkin. What the
right,
fuck?
like I was writing on anything I could get my fucking hands on. I did nothing but drink coffee and take notes.
Thought she was gonna throw me out.
Oh man, it's like, those 1-star reviews, in addition to the liberal propaganda thing, the other thing that they talked about was how dry and boring it is. And it's like, well, I guess if you expect it's going to have the pacing of, say, a John Wick, but that's not what the movie, like, that's not the kind of movie it is.
Yeah, I've seen movies that were as long or longer that didn't feel as short.
Yeah, no, I think this movie rocks. But I'm also one of those people that's fascinated by, like, oh my God, and then where did they go? And then what did she say? She's probably lying. Like, I love that in this movie. That, you talked about it earlier, but just that slow peeling of the onion as they think that they get this big story about, like, the committee to reelect being orchestrated. And then the third is like, you fucking dum-dums. That, yes, that happened, but it's also this giant, like, counterintelligence push against the Democratic Party.
Yeah. The reason why you think it's being covered up is not the reason why it's being covered up.
Right. Like, that is such a small part of the larger effort that the administration was making. And again, it's that Trumpian overtone of a president using the levers of his power to attack and get an edge on his political rivals. And I mean, that's why Nixon went down. That and the cover up, and they fucked that all up because they weren't very good. Like, there's that great Deep Throat thing is like, forget the mythology of the White House. These are not very bright people who screwed up.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. That's what it was then, and that's what it is now. For all the scandals in the Trump presidency, I mean, it was just a bunch of malicious stuff that, like, whether it was consciously malicious or not, a lot of the policies of the Trump administration were just malicious and ill-conceived and stupidly applied. Like, the one upside of the Trump presidency has been that they've been largely incompetent. And as much harm as they've done, they could have done so much more harm if they knew what the fuck they were doing.
Right.
If they weren't the gang who can't shoot straight, they would have been a real threat. Like, they're a threat, or, the administration was a threat in so many ways, but, at the end of the day, they didn't shake the pillars all the way. And that could have happened. A second term, I really think, would have done that.
Very, very much could have. And I think that's a good point where we should take a break, play the Legion Fund Me promo, and then get back in and wrap this up, talk about what could have happened, talk about the effectiveness of stupid people and other things. How's that sound?
Please.
All right. We will be right back.
This is Bo from LegionPodcasts.com. Hey, it's been a crazy time, and when the world gets nuts, we're happy to offer some old-fashioned podcast entertainment. But for some folks, getting a laugh out of a show isn't really helping these days. People who depend on tips in their bartending jobs or have been put on furlough with no pay till the worst of this coronavirus threat has passed. That's a tough spot. That's why we set up a GoFundMe for members of our community, a sort of grand-scale take a penny, leave a penny. For people like myself, for whom the recent disruptions haven't kicked us out of work, well, we can drop a few of those extra pennies in the GoFundMe jar. For those who are directly affected by recent events and find themselves looking for money to pay the electric bill or keep the water on, well, how about you give me a shout at B-O, at legionpodcasts.com. Let me know the situation and what you need, and we'll do our best to make life a little easier. And you can find links to the GoFundMe on the front page of legionpodcasts.com, on our Facebook group page, or on Twitter at Legion Podcasts, where it's the pinned tweet. For those of you who are able, thanks in advance for chipping in. And members of our community who need a hand, hey, here we are. Remember, stay safe, stay healthy, and we're all going to get through this together. Legion isn't just a name, it's who we are. Thanks for listening to all the shows here on Legion Podcasts, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hello.
Hello.
That's one of my favorite dumb Monty Python throwaways. Hello, Mrs. Gorilla. Hello, Mrs. Non-Gorilla.
Maybe I need to do Life of Brian for Christmas this year.
You know, I was always a fan of Holy Grail, obviously. And I think the older I get, the more I appreciate how funny Meaning of Life really is.
That's a good one.
Yeah. It gets more true.
This man is about to die. He's been allowed to choose his own method of execution. He's
that's right.
to be chased off a cliff by a bunch of boobs out ladies.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what I would pick, but I get it. But all right, so I'm glad you have topics for the second part of the show. Yes. It's probably good because if you let me go freeform too long, eventually it always leads back to the Muppet movie.
Well, which is fine. I hear you are going to be doing the Muppet Christmas Carol with Duncan this year.
I heard that too. You and I heard that at the same time. I suppose so. I mean, look, I got nothing against it. I like to think that I am like 85% Muppet, really. And I adore the Muppets. Even the shitty Muppet movies I kind of like, but the original Muppet movie, I might know that movie verbatim if I just sat down and tried.
I did not submit Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, but I guess there's nothing really spooky about that movie, although there is the metal glam band of the Bullies.
Here they are, the rock group known as the Nightmare.
Yeah, there's not much there. You could make a pretty strong argument for any of the Rudolph stuff having some horror elements in there. But I mean, obviously Muppet. Look, here's the thing that's going to be fun about Muppet Christmas Carol is we'll be doing Michael Caine impressions front to back, and his is all right. Mine is not. So that'll be fun. I've got to get to work is what I'm saying. I managed to cobble together a pretty good walk-in for the View to a Kill episode. Now I got to turn my attention to a passable Michael Caine.
I'm happy that my work has been fruitless, but for 4 years I've been working on a Trump impression. And it's not very good.
Let's hear it.
They're fake votes. The fake votes are coming in. You've got to understand that. See, it's not very.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. He's kind of tough. It's hard because he only has about 37 words that he uses, and so you would think that it would be easy to just figure out how he says those words.
Tremendous.
Right, but he just switches it up. Like he's a real switch hitter when it comes to his cadences. He's the one thing I really like. This is my favorite Trump thing ever, in a sea of just utter shit that I thought his presidency was. The thing that I always liked hating about him was when he would be reading a speech off the teleprompter and then would like riff for a second before he went back when he hit something that he thought he knew a little something about. So, like he would be given like a COVID speech and he would be like, yeah, I was talking to Dr. Birx. She really thinks that we're coming along with a vaccine. She said it could be any day now. And she's a special. Listen, people, she is one of the top in her field. I'm telling you right now. But Dr. Birx will be here on Thursday to speak. And those little asides when he just detours into Trump land for a second, and it's just like, hey, let me riff a little bit and throw some adverbs in here that I enjoy.
Great mind. Tremendous mind.
Really just the top of the class. We only have the best. It is a tough impression because it's so breathy. It's hard to manage.
I can do it in type. I can do a Trump ramble if I type it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of tough. You have to sit down and think about it because, like I said, he only uses 37 words, and it's like having those fridge poetry magnets, where you're trying to work them into a sentence he would say, but his sentence structure is so fucking weird because he'll do all these sub clauses within commas, and then all of a sudden you're in all caps and all bets are off. It's just madness. He's a character, man. Like, if he weren't so fucking harmful for our democracy, I could get some amusement out of it. But every time I start to think that he's just a clown, I remember that they're like, oh, there's children who will be forever unable to form meaningful relationships with people because of their emotional detachment from parents at a critical time in their lives. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
We have cursed thousands of children into being emotionally stunted in one form or another for their entire lives. So if it weren't for that, Daeron, I would think it was pretty funny.
Right. But yeah, according to the NBC count, it is 666 children. Yet he is the one fighting the satanic pedophile cabal.
Right. Yeah, why is the right wing not jumping on the fact that I have 666 children all ready to sacrifice to my dark master?
No parents. Your parents are very bad people. They probably voted Democrat.
It's a parents-free zone. Everybody's gonna get some ice cream. Everyone really, really likes vanilla.
And if you think about it, this is a very bad deal. This whole border thing. It's a bad deal.
Either of us are getting better at this impression.
Nope.
And I'm not sure how long the listeners are going to bear it.
So we should come back to it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about that I have mentioned it before, but in one of the, I still have some residual weirdness instilled in me from my time in the Catholic school system.
Sure.
Some superstitions or whatever, but the Day One agenda. Have you looked into too much of the Day One agenda?
Not a ton.
Okay.
I mean, I've read some of the EO stuff, but not entirely.
So basically, the Day One agenda is an activist group. But for those of you who do not know, if you just look it up, there will be things you can read. There's words.
A lot of people are saying this Day One agenda is very, very good.
Yeah. Now, a lot of wild ideas, like overhaul the business of Wall Street, or address climate crisis, or like we said before, talking about canceling lots of student loan debt, forcing drug companies to lower prices, the public option for simple banking, anti-monopoly legislation, effectively legalizing marijuana. Think of Biden. One of the things I have a lot of criticism of the man, but I really like how big of a fan of public transit he is. Maybe we'll get some cool shit out of that, but the tax revenue from decriminalized marijuana could go a long way in that. I mean, there's if you make under $400,000 a year, you probably don't have to worry about his tax plan. There's all sorts of other stuff that even part of me was reluctant to look too close into for, some weird sports fan political thing like, well, if I read about it, it'll never happen.
Right. I'm jinxing it. If I read his agenda and it turns out that it's like more pudding at the buffet, then I'd be like, oh, that's disappointing.
God damn it.
I mean, clearly that's not what it is. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of the Biden camp right now in terms of what they're trying to do. But so Day One agenda is all right, because I don't know nothing about this then. So they're a separate entity entirely that is, and I'll give you my knee jerk on this right away. As long as there's not an or else, then 100%. that sounds like a great and enthusiastic group to be part of. But if it's like, and if you don't do this, then I don't know what, we're not going to vote for you, or we're going to work to undermine your agenda. Like I'm not saying that they have such a stipulation. I'm saying I'm all for progressive groups pushing their policies, but don't try to hold an administration agenda hostage to get your way.
From what I understand, and like I said, I prevented myself from going too far into this. My next deep dives are going to be on gerrymandering, congressional district drawing, and this. Pretty much.
Yeah.
And from there was a person or two that I've heard interviews with about the Day One agenda. And it seems to be more of a movement, more of an idea that is centered largely around congressional scholars and lawyers who are finding out helpful things. This was started well before Biden was chosen as the Democrat nominee. Is basically progressive ideas and ideals that a president could do with the power that a president has. And
right, through executive order alone, what can you...
Yeah, here's what you can
do.
Yeah, here's what you can do about student loan debt. Here's what you can do about health care. Here's what you could do about this and that and the other thing. And it's more of a, I really hope you pay attention to this. We're doing a lot of the deep reading for you and simplifying. Please do some of this. I haven't seen any, we're gonna, we've seen the DNC do to some of the upstart progressives where they threaten political companies that they will not get their business anymore if they work with somebody that primaries an entrenched Democrat. This is more of, please do this, please check this out.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I was kind of skimming this, and a lot of this is like, hey, how about you make all the government vehicles zero-emission vehicles? It's like, oh yeah, what a great idea. And Biden clearly has made no bones about the fact that he wants clean energy to be a job creator. So that kind of stuff goes a long way, Yeah. Like if suddenly one of the car companies had a government contract for electric vehicles, that would both create jobs and help the planet in a substantial way. What a great idea. Okay. Yeah, I'm on board. This all seems great.
Yeah, so I'm going to be jumping into that.
Yeah, I'll have to dig in as well, but this all seems like, smart progressive stuff, not just like, let's decriminalize drugs.
Yeah.
Which
Give
is
us
great.
Cocaine and flying cars, you dick.
Right. All that stuff is great, but I like the fact that there's like, okay, we're going to experiment with that in Oregon and then see how it goes. But the stuff that I've seen just at a glance seems real smart. But I think that's right. Like I think that Biden and his team have been talking very openly about the fact that they plan to do as much as they can to exercise the authority of the presidency very quickly. Like he's already said, like, hey, we're back in Paris climate. We're back in WHO. Like that stuff he's already announced even before he's taken the oath. So, they're making moves, man. They're making moves to repair some of the damage and theoretically restore some global confidence in the U.S., although I think that's more a matter of like we need to get a couple more elections under the belt before the rest of the world is like, okay, you guys are cool again.
Yeah, we're still that crazy relative that you have a discussion on if you invite them to the holiday.
Well, yeah, like there's a watchful eye that needs to be kept on us for a while, because it's like we went for 4 years, we just had a bender and are now coming back. We're like, no, man, we're sorry about that. That was crazy. Look, but everything's good. I sobered up. I'm back at the table, and they're like, yeah, we're still cleaning the shit out of the fish tank. So
go get yourself screened.
speaking of coronavirus, Biden just saying like, I implore you people to wear a goddamn mask.
Right.
He didn't say goddamn, but.
Oh, I wish he would. That would be cool, but you know.
But I think it's what you need a president to be saying of just like, look, this isn't a partisan thing. This is a patriotic thing. Put on a mask. That's all we're saying. Just put on a mask when you go out in public. That's it. That's it. But it's nice to have a president that says it, you know?
Yeah, the basic things that you kind of forget used to exist. That you feel like, oh well, that's taken as a given, but when there's been 4 years of just, you can't count on that. You can't count on the basic level of administrative duty or something like that.
Yeah, much less the formal niceties like, do you honestly believe that Donald J. Trump is going to write a letter to Joe Biden and leave it at the Resolute desk?
It'll be a drawing of a middle finger.
Right.
Or just wipe his ass with it. Here we
somebody
go.
scanned his ass on a copier. Yeah, right. Like there, I think making the rounds recently was the one that G.W. Bush had, or GHW had left for Clinton.
The last one-termer.
Right. But left this beautiful letter about like, today as I enter the Oval Office for the last time, I am still humbled by the power of this place and that kind of thing. And like, look, I mean, you and I are no fans of George Herbert Walker Bush, but like that, again, it was a different time where being a Republican meant you had different ideas about how to make the country a better place. Yeah. And social ideas. Like, I mean, there was definitely a lot of that in there, but it, that was also at the time where you would have a George H.W. Bush say we need to be kind to one another, even though we have political differences. Meanwhile, the political ads were fucking savage.
Yeah, it's true. Republicans have always been really good at the negative ad. Speaking of which, the
please.
Lincoln Project, monorail.
Lincoln Project, these feel like Republicans that we can talk to and aren't lunatics. Like, and again, people on the left, if you think that Republicans aren't necessary to pass legislation, I don't know what to tell you. You gotta take some civics classes. This is how it all fucking works, people. So we need reasonable people that we can reach across the aisle to. The Lincoln Project went out of its way. Also, Republican Voters Against Trump, RVAT, was a player in Florida. They didn't, obviously Florida didn't go for Biden. Came pretty fucking close. And there were a lot of Republicans there and abroad. One of the first elections I can recall where Republicans crossed the lines in these numbers, not the ones in the Senate. Like nobody was winning any medals in those hallowed halls, but a lot of like Republican governors and ex politicians and so forth coming out against Trump, I thought was certainly unusual. And at a time like this, like that gave me some optimism that there were still people out there that could disagree politically with a Joe Biden, but still understand that he is fundamentally a better human being than Trump. And so, and also would not fucking destroy the country. Like everyone has a vested interest in the craziest part of the population not running everything. You need some responsible people to steer the ship. And so all that stuff, I think that stuff has been great, and I hope that it is the foundation for being able to extend that communication to the rest of the Republican Party. I mean, again, that's cockeyed optimism, but why not? It seems like the groundwork is laid to be able to say, like, these are people that disagree with us, but also we can have a beer with and enjoy being around.
I'm waiting to see on if they how they go after things, because I noticed they were relatively absent in the Amy Barrett confirmation times. They were very present in the anti-Trump campaign. I want to see what they're doing during the Georgia runoff, and I want to see if they maintain that goodwill that they gained with a lot of non-Republican people, or if it's going to be a self-serving venture. But as we come close to the end of this episode, what are you looking forward to the most? I don't think I've actually asked this. January 20th will be the 4-year anniversary of this show. I kind of ramped things up after the election last time.
Sure. And, I can't imagine why, but
yeah, right. So come January 20th, and I really don't think that I've asked anybody what they're looking forward to the most ever in the history of this show. So I will dare to ask.
What are you optimistic about? Yeah. So one thing, not to extend the show even longer, but let me just address the thing you said about the Lincoln Project acting in their own self-interest. I think, of course, they will. I think with the Amy Comey Barrett stuff, it was a conservative judge, and it's a conservative group. Let's not be closed-eyed about that. They have a very specific kind of Republican that they are going to go against. If it is a Republican Supreme Court justice, that probably ain't the person. If it is a QAnon weirdo, because what that group and groups like it are in it for is to save the Republican Party. They're not trying to help the Democratic Party. They're trying to save their party. And they understand that the extremist Trump group of the Republican Party is ultimately cancerous. So they're trying to excise that without losing the party as a whole. That's their whole game. And to that end, and I think this is right. I think that's how politics should be. When our interests align, we are certainly happy bedfellows, and there are going to be times when our interests very, very much don't align, and we're going to be at opposite ends of the table, but we're not going to shut off the possibility of our interests aligning again in the future. So I think like a Kelly Loeffler in Georgia, I think you might very well see Lincoln Project go against her. But a more mainstream Republican, they're probably going to be on his side, or
they'll leave Romney alone.
Yeah, they're not going to go against a Romney. They're not going to go against a Rubio or a Ted Cruz as crazy. Like, they're sycophants, but they're not crazy. But again, like the QAnon people and that kind of thing, I think you're going to see him try to get rid of that part of the party. And that's fine. Again, if the Republican Party that survives Trump is one that once voted with us to elect Joe Biden, that's a Republican Party we can kind of work with. That's the kind of Republican Party that can pass like a decent budget that's not crazy, that kind of thing. So let's not look that gift horse in the mouth. But to your question of what am I looking forward to? I think the swearing in is going to be great. I'm really looking forward to Inauguration Day. I hope someone has the foresight to make the joke, because it's going to be a sparse gathering because of COVID.
Yeah. Well, and I hope the Trump fans are booking up his hotel for his inauguration.
Fine, because of COVID, this thing was never going to be the most attended inauguration, and in fact, they may hold it in a very small venue because just to discourage people from gathering, So, but what I hope is that someone has the foresight to then later claim that it was the largest group of people that had ever attended an inauguration. Like, clearly when it's not, then
get Sean
I think that would
Spicer
be
to
very
do it
fun.
too. He's not doing shit.
Right, he's on Dancing with the Stars. Like that guy can be bought. Yeah, so that I hope someone has the foresight to say that. But I am really looking forward to the swearing in. I do go in for that kind of ceremony. I'm a sucker for democracy, Daeron. And when you see a president sworn in, that's, you know, when Trump was sworn in, one of the reasons it hurt so much is because that is the president being sworn into office. One of the reasons this is going to feel so good is that somebody else is being sworn into office. That's going to be great. Also, there's probably going to be better musical guests than if Trump had won. But other things I'm looking forward to see how aggressive he gets with the executive orders. I think there really is some exciting stuff that could be done, not just to undo what Trump did. I'm optimistic, and I'm looking forward to see whether or not a couple of years of Biden can genuinely lower the temperature in the country. Like, I don't expect that right away, but imagine at midterms, if everything's just kind of going pretty good, like we're getting, like COVID is kind of behind us. You know, we're dealing with it at least, and people who aren't taking the vaccine are dying, and we're like, take the fucking vaccine, stupid. But other than that, like, the economy is surging again. People are starting to go out of their house. They're starting to travel again. There's a kind of a spirit of optimism in the country. Like, that is something that could really happen. And in that moment, I'm one of those suckers, Daeron, that believes that as unlikely a candidate as Joe Biden is, this fucking pasty old white man may be the right dude to make everybody in the country feel like the president being boring is kind of cool. And that we don't need to be at odds all the time. And so what I'm looking forward to is the future, Daeron. Something I haven't said in a long time. I'm looking forward to see what happens next, because for the first time in a long time, and I you know, I'm sure there are people on the other side of this political divide that feel exactly the opposite. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like there is an opportunity for this country to be the kind of country that we are in the movies. And not necessarily All the President's Men, where it's all the corrupt real shit, but the America that pops up in all the like black and white World War II movies, you know, where you lose Jeff from Brooklyn, who was your best buddy storming the beach in Normandy, but you did it because the world needed you. And that kind of shit. That's the thing I'm looking forward to. And there still are a lot of problems in America, but there is also that sense that we can all be Americans, and that we can have a shared sense of purpose. And here's the trick, and here's why you need a leader, is that you need someone to define what that single purpose is. And for Trump, it was to boost his ego. It was to love Trump. And you know, for us, a certain portion of the population, that was fun. You know, that was their guy. But for the rest of us, having a president that gives a more unifying vision of the country and says, like, hey, our mission right now as a country is to heal ourselves, you know. And that's kind of what he said in his speech this past Saturday, was, you know, when he kind of quoted the song. No, it was the Bible verses about, you know, there being a time to sow and a time to reap. And he said, you know, and now is the time to heal. And that's what we have to do in this country. You know, I think the reason that was such a prominent part of the speech is because I think Biden senses that is the thing that he wants to tackle most. It might be his white whale. Like, it might be a thing that he very quickly discovers he is unable to tackle. It depends, you know, like, like everything, it kind of depends on how the right-wing media spins it. If the right-wing media spun this as Joe Biden reaches out to the right, we have a chance. If they spin it, cynical Sleepy Joe treats all of you like dum-dums, then we're in trouble. So
Sleepy Joe's coming to kill you.
Right. Yeah. He pretends he's not a socialist because he's never ever said a socialist thing in his life, but secretly he's a socialist.
I wish he was as left as Fox News says he is, but I look forward to pressuring a president not from the depths of a black chasm.
Yeah.
That's me. There will be things that Biden will not come left on, but he is not Donald Trump, which was a cornerstone of the election, but very much so. I mean, no way in fucking hell that Donald Trump's going to do anything that Donald Trump doesn't want to do. Joe Biden has shown himself to completely go against things that he used to support when he's been shown that a lot of people are into it.
Yeah, and again, this is going to sound like I'm being a total patsy for Biden. But I also think it's like, not only do most people agree with it, they also think it's the right thing. I think that matters to him. And I think that's why he's so resistant on the defund the police stuff. And I don't think it's because he's trying to be like willingly anti-progressive. I just think he's an old man and he's just like, get rid of police. Are you fucking crazy? And that's just where he is, man. He's an old man. But I think you're right, though. I think that he's willing to bend way further. Like, clearly, he is going to be able to direct the country in a more progressive way than Trump. Like, if Trump had won a second term and carried through with it, like, there are so many, like, the thin line between the judicial and executive branches was, I mean, we were perilously close to him using the attorney general as his thug. And
he seems to be itching for it.
Wants to, and Barr seems to like that role. And that's horrifying. And just knowing that Joe Biden is stepping into the presidency with, like, the idea of using an attorney general to attack his political enemies is as foreign to Joe Biden as driving when you could take a train. Like, that's just not where his head's at. He's not an authoritarian.
That's some straight up bunk, Jack.
That's a bunch of malarkey, Jack.
Yeah, and I also look forward to teasing president about being an old man rather than being a Nazi.
Right. Yeah, he's going to be. But also, here's the thing. Every time you tease him about being an old man, someone's going to show you a picture of him hugging that kid again.
Yeah.
When he's just like, hey, you're going to be all right, aren't you? No. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Oh, man, brings a tear to my eye. Just thinking about it, Daeron. The way he held that kid's head in his hand and was just hugging him like a dad. Fuck, Daeron. Like, that's something you never saw Trump do. Like, with his grown children. Like, there was a thing, sorry to turn this into just a Biden love fest, but fuck it, how often do we get a chance to just celebrate the fact that we won the presidency? At the big fireworks display, there was a moment when he kind of leans over to his son, and he says, like, it was silent, but you could just make out the words where he said, "You ever seen anything like this?" Where he was genuinely excited by fucking fireworks. That's the kind of president I want, that has a sense of wonder and excitement about shit. Like, Joe Biden had never seen that shit in his life before. of those drones and fireworks and stuff, he was just like, how the fuck did they do that? Kamala, how'd they do that?
That's something I never imagined, growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Right. And like him with his grandkids and stuff, and it like holding his grandkid on his shoulder and that kind of thing as the fireworks were going off in the background. Like that kind of shit was like, man, we just haven't seen this from the White House in a while, of like people loving their family and hugging and smiling and laughing, and and even Biden saying dumb shit like, Kamala, you and Doug, you're Biden's now, whether you like it or not. That kind of old man shit, like pull my finger, that kind of stuff. I fucking adore it because he's such a lovable old goof. And that's what I kind of I always liked about Biden. He just seems like a guy who believes what he believes and says what he says, and he means so well. Like there is not an ounce of malice in his heart, but sometimes he just says dumb shit. Like that's the Biden I've always liked, and that's the president we've got. And having him, like vetting him through the campaign and seeing those videos of him, not just in this campaign, but from years ago, and it was these random acts of kindness videos and that was the narrative, was just like, look what a nice guy he is. And things like Obama saying, you think I'm bad working a rope line? Like, ask the Secret Service about Joe Biden. Couldn't get the fucking guy in the car, like he just shook hands with everybody and told stories and shit because he's a Grandpa Joe, and I adore that, man. I'm so happy that that's who's running the country, that we have this lovable old grandpa instead of this like frowning, scowling, spitting tyrant. That alone makes me feel so much better, like you could have told me that we wouldn't have a COVID vaccine for another 18 months. As long as I know that, Joe Biden is being like, don't give me that malarkey. I know our scientists can do better. Like if that guy is in charge, great. We're gonna get there. Like I feel a sense of possibility with Joe Biden that just doesn't exist in a world with Trump.
Yeah, there are two different kinds of grandpas. The grandpa that you don't want to get dropped off with for the weekend, and the one that you do. And yeah, and until we get rid of the Electoral College or start ranked choice voting, there's gonna be a lot of strategic voting, and yeah, it's just working with the system while you change it.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing to feel good about too, if you're a Democrat or just tend to vote Democratic, however you identify yourself, that the popular vote has gone to the Democratic candidate 7 out of the past 8 presidential elections. So there's something we're doing right. Like we got problems with the Electoral College and that kind of thing, but more people in this country believe in our vision. The thing that we have to do as a party and as a movement, and I said this the last time I was here, but it's the thing I believe, is that through kindness and love, we have to keep showing the rest of this country that our ideas are better, not because we're smarter, but because our ideas are going to help them too. That it's not because we are better and brighter that we deserve to run things. It's because we all think that these ideas are going to make this country and the people in it better and happier and healthier and safer. And that's the argument that we need to keep making. And again, do it with kindness, do it with respect, do it with love. And that is how I think we keep winning.
I think you just wrapped us up, man. You need to plug some stuff. You're very busy person.
I can plug stuff. Obviously, legionpodcast.com is where you can find this show and many, many others. And thanks to all the new listeners, which we clearly have a several of. So for me personally, if you want to hear more out of me, where I just kind of shit on things and don't talk about things about like optimism and love, then you can check out Pick 6 Movies with my pal Chad. And we do 6 movies built around a single theme for a season. We are wrapping up our James Bond season called Bonds, James Bonds, where we look at one movie from each of the James Bond actors. And that has been a real journey for me as someone who doesn't really care for James Bond movies. So that my approach has been slightly different. And then Duncan and Bo Come Correct, a new episode just dropped literally the day that we're recording this, and we are continuing our look at the amazing show Lovecraft Country. If you're not watching it, you should. It's all wrapped up now, but Duncan and I don't know that because we haven't finished watching the show yet and done those episodes.
I've got 2 episodes left myself.
Okay, so you're about where I am then. You might be 1 episode ahead of me, but what a great show. And oh geez, what am I forgetting? You can go to patreon.com / Legion Podcast if you want to support Legion Podcasts. Not only can you support the network and help pay for servers and stuff like that, but you can get a bunch of like free commentary and movie stuff over there that I do. And then Hero Go Show has a new episode that will be coming maybe this week. It depends on how much of the editing I get done. And that feels like it, but that also feels like a lot.
That is a very busy schedule. Like Bo said, please continue to check out this show, even though it wasn't listed among his favorite political shows to listen to.
But I only named one show. Also, hey, and I know you heard this promo already, but if you go to legionpodcast.com, there is a GoFundMe there. Legitimately, if you contribute to that, here's what happens. I'll give you an honest to goodness true story. Somebody emails me and says, hey man, I got a problem. I need some help paying some bills this month. And I say, how much? And they tell me how much. And then I send them that money. And so that is where that GoFundMe stuff goes. Is people who are having a tough time of things, as well as a couple of like Lambda Legal and a couple of other organizations we've given a little bit of money to when the moment seemed right to do so. If you're interested in those kinds of organizations, and also just straight up just helping people get by in some cases when maybe they wouldn't if they didn't have us to talk to. Maybe they would. I'm not saying we're the only game in town, but they didn't have to go anywhere else because we could help. And the reason we could help is because people are donating to that GoFundMe. So if you got a couple of extra bucks, doesn't have to be much, $2, $3, $4, whatever, please do. And then I'm done huckstering for charity now.
You shameless shill for charity.
Yes, God is my witness. This is 100% true. Hand to God, whatever you need me to do to prove the veracity of this statement. We have given out way more money than the GoFundMe has taken in various forms to help people. So, yes, please help, but that does not mean that if you are in need, please drop me a line, bo at legionpodcast.com, and we will certainly do our best if we are able. And as I said, in many forms, it's kind of a take a penny, leave a penny thing. Like, hey, drop in some money if you got some extra, and if you ever need a hand, then hey, let me know, and we'll look at taking a penny too. So, all right,
yeah,
that's truly it.
Apes together strong.
100%. That is the socialist heart of this network, is that a rising tide lifts all ships, and that is both works on the podcast level, it works on the charity level, it works on the political level. If we do good work happily and well, we will succeed.
Don't forget to fucking duck and cover, everybody. I hope you hear the cheer in my voice. Here we go into the next chapter. I am quitting the show. Now that Trump's gone, the show is over. I'm taking all the money.
Then look, Biden's gonna do plenty to piss us off in like 3 months. Like the honeymoon will not last forever. So let's just enjoy it for now, and then we'll get pissed when he's like compromise on a public option somewhere down the line. But
something somewhere, but it's gonna be better. It's been shown that we can fucking do it. It's gonna be better.
It's gonna be better. Yeah, that is the thing that you can, listeners, you can walk out of here right now humming that tune to yourself. It's gonna be better.